government of the United States, I'd like to apologize to our men and women in the armed forces and their families, to the people of Iraq, to our allies, and to all the world's people. Undoing the damage done by our war against Iraq will be impossible. We'll do what we can. We'll use our money to help the Iraqis rebuild their country, their infrastructure, their society. But we can't do it as an occupying power. I'm asking the United Nations to send peacekeepers to Iraq. But whether or not they do, we will leave within 3 months. We are going to support what's left of our troops by bringing them home while they're still alive. Terrorism is a real threat. In the short term, we must protect the American people from the terrorists our misguided policies have already created. This means enhancing port security, beefing up cockpit doors, strengthening the Border Patrol and Coast Guard. We'll do these things. But in the long term, we must stop making more terrorists. That means stopping policies and actions which make people fear and hate us. It means listening to the legitimate grievances of peoples we have wronged and then changing our ways. Only one thing has ever ended a campaign of terror: separating the handful of terrorists from the larger community upon which they depend. This is done by ending the feelings of desperation, helplessness, and powerlessness afflicting the people. It is done by listening to them and then actually making their lives better. It is not done by revenge and retaliation, which only create more terrorists. In the end, we can have revenge or we can have security. We cannot have both. Now, we have at times, including I think the last few years, had a government with bad policies. But we're a good people. What we have long needed is a government which reflects the values and goodness of the American people. Our values and goodness are not reflected by a government which promotes a globalization which depresses living standards at home and allows corporations to destroy the quality of life in banana republics and client states all over the world. The WTO, the IMF, and the World Bank have caused untold suffering. If we can't reform them, we will abolish them. I have ordered the cancellation of the Security and Prosperity Partnership, or North American Union, abandonment of plans for an NAFTA superhighway, which would have put nearly all American longshoremen and truckers out of work, and suspension of NAFTA completely until Mexico gives its workers union rights, protections for safety, health, and the environment, and wages at least matching the U.S. federal government. We have compassion for Mexican workers trying to feed their families. Let us start by helping them in their own country. Finally, I am ordering the imposition of tariffs on products made outside the country to make their cost the same as if they had been produced in the United States. Small business loans will be used to rebuild our manufacturing base. From now on, globalization will mean raising living standards in the developing nations to match ours, not the other way around. thin air. The Constitution authorizes Congress to print our money, not a private cartel mostly owned by the Queen of England. I asked Congress to pass legislation buying back and then eliminating the Federal Reserve. Our values and goodness are not reflected by a government which uses our money to train death squads in the techniques of torture, intimidation, and assassination. The School of the Americas, by whatever name they choose to call it, will be closed. By the way, as Commander-in-Chief, I have ordered that the students presently attending the school be shown the movies Romero and Panama Deception, and then sent home. Our values and goodness are not reflected by a government which gives most favored nation status to the butchers of Tiananmen Square and places an illegal secondary embargo on the impoverished people of Cuba. The embargo of Cuba must end, and it must. Good advance information on the activities of Al-Qaeda, one of our creations, of course, and all those who wish to do us harm. But our values and goodness are not reflected by, and our security is not enhanced by, an organization which promotes instability, insurrection, tyranny, torture, terrorism, murder, and war around the world in our name and with our money. If the CIA won't stick to gathering intelligence, I will abolish it. Now, earlier I outlined 2 missions for the Department of Defense. These missions are notable for what they do not include. They do not include protecting the worldwide financial interests of multinational corporations, and we won't. If the global robber barons insist on using force to subjugate third world peoples, let them use their own ill-gotten money and hire their own mercenaries. In the past, American taxpayers provided their own sons and daughters as cannon fodder and then got stuck with the bill as well. That will never happen again. Our values and goodness are not reflected by a government which sends its working class youth around the world to kill the sons and daughters of working people in other countries. Our values and goodness are not reflected by sending our children to the Middle East to kill Arabs so the oil companies can profit from selling the oil under other people's sand, making us the target of terrorists. No more Iraqs. No more Kosovos, no more El Salvadors. These are not just isolated incidents of stupidity. They're part of a long, bloody history of foreign policy being conducted for the financial interest of the wealthy few. It's a new form of colonialism. It violates our Constitution. It mortgages our future. It endangers our national security. It sacrifices our children, and it must stop. And it just did. As president, I will use the men and women in our armed forces to protect our borders and our people, not the financial interests of Folgers, Chiquita Banana, Exxon, and Halliburton. With over 60 years having passed since World War II, and with the Cold War long since over, I see no reason why we should still be occupying Germany and Japan. Our global military presence will end within 2 years. common sense. It is in the security interest of our people. And it is following the Constitution. Every president in recent memory has violated our founding documents with foreign military ventures. At my inauguration, I swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. So did they. But lip service isn't enough. We must treat the Constitution as if it mattered. And I intend to do just that. Instead of a worldwide military presence, we're going to have a humanitarian presence. Along with the other wealthy nations of the world, we shall initiate a new Marshall Plan, providing funds to rebuild the Middle East as we built Europe after World War II. We will also have a domestic Marshall Plan fulfilling the unkept promises made to rebuild New Orleans and the surrounding area. In addition, we will take the lead in complete debt forgiveness for the poorest countries, starting with those in Africa. If we are once again to be a great nation, we must first be a good nation. We must build an America at peace with the world and with its own people. An America that seeks not to be king of the hill, nor subservient to the World Trade Organization, but to be a responsible, sovereign member of the family of nations, nothing more and nothing less. An America that is free of the threat of terrorism, because it is no longer feared and hated. An America that leads the world, not just with military might, but with its vision, its compassion, its democracy, its productivity, its freedom, its standard of living, its treatment of its own people, and its goodness. That's the kind of America our people deserve. And working together and with God's help, that's the kind of America we will become. Once again, God has richly blessed America by making our inevitable second revolution a nonviolent one. Power has been restored to the people. Our future is secure and bright. My fellow Americans, fellow patriots, let us joyfully walk together into that future. It is in our hands. Thank you, and God bless you and good night.